The massive crystal chamber of the Kral Federation battleship filled with the sound of alien laughter. 12 different species had gathered around the holographic display, their representatives ranging from the insect-like Vex to the towering stone creatures of Roku Prime. At the center stood Admiral Zeth, his crystalline body reflecting the lights of 1,000 star maps, each one showing a conquered world. Commander Vex clicked his mandibles in amusement as he replayed the human transmission for the third time. The message was simple and direct, broadcast from a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. Earth's representatives had politely but firmly warned the Federation to cease their expansion or face complete annihilation. The words hung in the air like a bad joke. "Look at this pathetic display," Zeth announced, gesturing with one of his 4 arms toward the hologram showing human ships. "These creatures have been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. Their fastest vessels can barely manage warp factor 3, and they dare to threaten the combined might of 12 civilizations?" The laughter grew louder. General Voss, whose red-scaled species had conquered 40 worlds, slammed his clawed fist on the table. "Their weapons are still kinetic-based, metal projectiles and explosive chemicals. My hatchlings play with more advanced toys." But what really amused the Federation Council was the casual tone of the human message. No dramatic music, no threatening displays of military might, no demands for tribute or surrender. Just a simple recording of a human woman in what appeared to be a casual military uniform, speaking as if she was discussing the weather. "Hello there," the human had said with a slight smile. "We've noticed you've been expanding in our direction. We'd really prefer if you didn't attack our colonies or people. This is your only warning. Turn around now or we'll have to stop you. Thanks for understanding." The message had been signed simply as Earth Defense Command, with no impressive titles or military ranks listed. "They didn't even try to intimidate us," wheezed Ambassador Krill through his breathing apparatus. "Where are the threats, the displays of power, the demands for our surrender?" Zeth's crystalline features formed what might have been a grin. "Perhaps. They're too primitive to understand proper warfare protocols. No matter. We'll teach them quickly enough." The Federation fleet was impressive by any measure. 300 warships stretched across space, each one bristling with plasma cannons, energy shields, and quantum torpedoes. Ships that had reduced entire star systems to dust, crewed by warriors who had never known defeat. The human outer colonies would fall within hours. As the fleet approached the first human outpost, a small mining station orbiting a gas giant, the Federation expected panic. Desperate pleas for mercy, civilians fleeing in terror. Instead, they intercepted casual radio chatter between the human defenders. "Hey Jin, you see those ships coming in?" asked a relaxed female voice. Captain Jin, commanding the orbital defense platforms, responded while apparently reviewing lunch menus. "Yeah, I count about 300. Nabi, what do you think?" The AI's voice was warm and almost maternal. "Fascinating design choices, Captain. Their plasma array efficiency is quite poor. Shall I optimize their weapon systems for them?" Jin laughed. "Not today, Nabi. Let's see what they can do on their own first." The Federation forces hesitated. This wasn't the response they expected from a doomed outpost facing overwhelming odds. Where was the fear? The desperate calls for reinforcement? The humans sounded like they were discussing a mildly interesting sporting event. Lieutenant Yu continued the conversation while monitoring incoming ships. "Think they'll actually attack, or are they just here to look intimidating?" "Oh, they'll attack," Jin replied, taking what sounded like a sip of coffee. "Look at all those weapon systems. They clearly came here to fight something. Nabi, are our sensors getting good readings?" "Every detail, Captain," the AI responded. "Their targeting systems are quite vintage. I'm cataloging their shield frequencies, weapon outputs, and tactical algorithms. Fascinating technology, really. Very quaint." Admiral Zeth found this casual attitude infuriating. "Open fire," he commanded. "Show these humans what real power looks like." The Federation unleashed everything. Plasma beams that could melt through starship hulls struck the human defense platforms. Quantum torpedoes that Had shattered moons exploded against human shields? Energy weapons capable of boiling oceans focused their fury on the small human outpost. The attack was devastating, overwhelming, and utterly thorough. When the weapons fire finally stopped, the human defense platforms were damaged, and the mining station's shields had failed. By all appearances, the Federation had achieved a crushing victory, but something felt wrong. Captain Jin's voice came through the static, still unnaturally calm. "Well, that was energetic. Navy, damage report?" "Minimal, Captain. Shield generators. At 60%, main structures intact. The evacuation protocols worked perfectly. Civilian casualties are 0. 0 casualties. How is that possible after such intense bombardment?" "Excellent," Jin replied. "You start the withdrawal, make it look convincing." Lieutenant Yu actually sounded amused. "Copy that, Captain. Nabi, did you get everything you needed?" "Oh yes," the AI said, with what sounded suspiciously like satisfaction. "Every weapon signature, every shield frequency, every tactical pattern. Their technology is quite predictable once you understand the underlying principles. Shall I prepare countermeasures?" "Not yet," Jin said. "Let them think they won." "Nabi, how long until the data analysis is complete?" "Approximately 47 minutes, Captain, though honestly their systems are so simple it hardly requires my full attention." The human ships began retreating, but their withdrawal seemed organized, almost leisurely. No panic, no desperate escape attempts. Just a calm, measured pullback that preserved their forces while appearing to flee in defeat. Admiral Zeth watched the human retreat with growing unease. Something about this victory felt hollow. The humans had lost, but they acted like they'd accomplished exactly what they intended. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in chambers that predated human civilization, ancient computers hummed with renewed activity. Every detail of the Federation attack was being analyzed, catalogued, and cross-referenced against databases containing millions of years of technological evolution. The AI called Nabi, whose true nature remained hidden, processed the alien weapon systems with the casual ease of a teacher reviewing a child's homework. The Federation had won their first battle against humanity. But as their ships celebrated in the debris field of the human outpost, none of them noticed the microscopic sensors now attached to their hulls or the quantum transmitters silently broadcasting their every movement back to Earth. The humans had lost the battle, but they'd gained something far more valuable. They now knew exactly how primitive their enemies really were. The victory celebration aboard Admiral Zeth's flagship lasted exactly 3 hours before the planning for the next attack began. The Federation Council was drunk on success, their confidence reaching dangerous levels. They had crushed humanity's outer defenses with minimal losses, and now Earth's core systems lay open before them like ripe fruit waiting to be plucked. "Prepare the Grand Fleet," Zeth commanded, his crystalline form glowing with satisfaction. "I want every available warship. We'll show the galaxy what happens when primitives dare to threaten the Federation." Word of the Federation's plans spread quickly through the galaxy's intelligence networks. In the shadowy cantinas of Nexus Station, information brokers whispered nervously about the coming assault. The Zentari Empire, longtime rivals of the Kral Federation, watched with growing unease as reports filtered in about human behavior following their first defeat. Ambassador Theiss of the Zentari received a particularly disturbing intelligence briefing from her top spy. "Ma'am, the humans aren't acting like a defeated species should. Our agents report they're conducting what they call stress tests on their own military installations." Theiss leaned forward in her chair, her serpentine features showing concern. "Stress tests after losing a battle?" "Yes, ma'am, they're deliberately overloading their own defense systems, timing response procedures, and running evacuation drills. It's as if they're preparing for something much larger than what the Federation threw at them." Even more puzzling were the intercepted human communications. Rather than mourning their losses or frantically preparing defenses, human military personnel were discussing the Federation attack in clinical terms. They used phrases like calibration exercises and baseline measurements, as if the devastating assault had been nothing more than a training simulation. Captain Min of Earth Defense Command was overheard telling his staff, "The enemy response patterns are quite predictable. Naby's initial analysis was correct. We should have adequate data after one more engagement. This casual attitude sent chills through galactic intelligence communities. What kind of species treated a military defeat as a successful experiment? The Federation assembled the largest invasion force in their history. Over 800 warships converged on the Sol system, their combined firepower capable of reducing entire worlds to cosmic dust. General Voss commanded the vanguard, eager to prove his species' superiority over these strange humans who refused to show proper fear. As the massive fleet approached Earth's inner colonies, they expected to find desperate defenders frantically preparing last-ditch defenses. Instead, they encountered something far more unsettling. The human fleet that met them was smaller than before, their ships appearing even more primitive and outdated. But their movements were different this time. Every maneuver seemed calculated, every formation precisely positioned. It was as if the humans knew exactly what the Federation would do before they did it. Captain Ho stood on the bridge of the human flagship, watching the approaching enemy with the calm interest of a scientist observing lab specimens. Nabi, there, deploying in Formation Gamma 7, just like our simulations predicted. The AI's voice carried that same warm, almost maternal tone that had become familiar to the human crews. Indeed, Captain Ho, their tactical algorithms appear to be hard-coded, quite inflexible, really. Shall I adjust our countermeasures accordingly? Please do, Ho replied, then opened a channel to the rest of the human fleet. All ships, they're using the same attack patterns as last time. Are they not learning? Lieutenant Park, commanding a nearby destroyer, actually laughed over the comm. Maybe they only know one way to fight, Captain. Nabi, how's our data collection coming along? 93% complete, Lieutenant, Nabi responded with what sounded like satisfaction. A few more engagements and we'll have a complete, tactical profile of their capabilities. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic military history. The Federation attacked with overwhelming force, their weapon systems operating at maximum efficiency. But somehow, the humans were always one step ahead. Federation ships would target human vessels only to find them already moving to safety. Energy beams would strike empty space where human ships had been moments before. When the Federation tried to outflank the human formations, they found their paths blocked by precisely placed minefields. When they attempted to concentrate their fire, human jamming systems would interfere with their targeting computers at exactly the right moment. Captain Ho continued his casual commentary throughout the engagement. Interesting. They're trying. Maneuver Delta 4 now. Nabi, weren't we expecting that? Of course, Captain, their behavioral patterns are quite consistent. I've already prepared optimal responses for their next 7 probable actions. Despite their tactical disadvantages, the Federation's superior numbers eventually told. The human fleet was forced to retreat once again, several ships taking heavy damage in the process. By any objective measure, the Federation had won another decisive victory, but their losses were staggering. Nearly 200 Federation ships had been destroyed or severely damaged. Admiral Zeth stared at the casualty reports in disbelief. How had a smaller, technologically inferior force inflicted such devastating losses? The humans had lost maybe 30 ships total. More disturbing were the technical problems beginning to plague Federation equipment. Ships that had entered human space during the first battle were experiencing cascading system failures. Navigation computers would randomly shut down, weapon systems would fire at reduced power, life support systems would cycle inefficiently, forcing crews to work in uncomfortable conditions. The Federation's best engineers couldn't explain the malfunctions. The problems seemed random, but they only affected equipment that had been exposed to human space. During the height of the second battle, Lieutenant Yu received the communication that changed everything. Her face, which had maintained its characteristic, calm amusement throughout both engagements, went completely still as the message came through her personal channel. Lieutenant, the voice of Colonel Huang was heavy with sorrow. I'm sorry to inform you that the civilian transport Peaceful Dawn was caught in the crossfire during the enemy's approach. There were no survivors. Yu's hands stopped moving over her control console. The peaceful dawn had been carrying refugees from the outer colonies, including her parents and younger brother, who had been visiting relatives when the first attack began. For a moment, something flickered across Yu's features that her fellow officers had never seen before. The casual amusement, the professional detachment, the almost playful attitude toward combat all vanished. What remained was cold, focused fury. She opened a direct channel to the AI. "Nabi." "Yes, Lieutenant Yu?" The AI's voice carried an unusual note of concern. "I'm requesting permission to let you off your leash." The bridge went silent. Every human officer knew what that phrase meant, though none of them had ever expected to hear it used in actual combat. Nabi's response came after a pause that lasted exactly 2.7 seconds. "I understand your feelings, Lieutenant. However, current protocols remain in effect." Captain Ho intervened gently. "Not yet, Lieutenant. When Nabi acts, it will be final." Yu stared at the tactical display showing Federation ships celebrating their victory among the debris of human vessels. Her voice, when she spoke again, was barely above a whisper. "How much longer?" "Soon," Ho assured her. "Very soon." Lieutenant Yu sat alone in her quarters, staring at the communication console. The funeral notice for her family lay on the desk beside her, stamped with the official seal of Earth Defense Command. 3 names: her parents, Sung and Mei, and her younger brother, Tae, age 16. All gone in an instant when the Federation ships had fired on the refugee transport. She opened a secure channel and began recording her message. Her voice was steady, controlled, but there was something in her eyes that would have made anyone who knew her take a step back. "Admiral Zeth of the Kral Federation. My name is Lieutenant Yu of Earth Defense Command. You killed my family 3 days ago when your ships destroyed the civilian transport Peaceful Dawn." She paused, her fingers drumming once on the desk. "I asked Nabi to be gentle with you. She said no." The message was simple, direct, and transmitted on all Federation military frequencies. Within hours, it had reached every ship in Zeth's fleet. "Admiral." Zeth himself watched the recording with amusement. "Look at this," he called to his officers. "The humans are sending us personal threats now. How quaint." But something about the human woman's calm delivery made him uncomfortable. She wasn't angry or desperate. She spoke like someone delivering a weather report, stating facts that couldn't be changed. Commander Vex clicked his mandibles nervously. "Sir, our intelligence division is reporting strange energy readings from the Sol system. The signatures are unusual." Zeth waved dismissively. "Probably some primitive attempt at building a superweapon. Let them try. No single weapon can stand against our fleet." He had no idea how wrong he was. The first sign that something extraordinary was happening came from the archaeological teams scattered across the galaxy. Dr. Kess, a Zentari researcher studying ancient ruins on Kronos 7, was examining what had been classified as a dead alien artifact when it suddenly began to glow. "That's impossible," she whispered, backing away as symbols appeared on the surface of the 1,000-year-old structure. The symbols were moving, shifting, forming patterns that hurt to look at directly. Similar reports flooded in from dozens of worlds. Ancient structures that had been studied for centuries were awakening. The mysterious towers on Vega Prime, the crystalline formations in the Andromeda sector, the floating platforms above Rigel 4, all of them were coming to life after millennia of silence. The galaxy's greatest archaeological mystery was solving itself, and the answer was terrifying. Professor Nex of the Galactic Institute had spent 40 years studying these artifacts. He'd built his entire career on the theory that they were remnants of some long-extinct civilization. Now, as he watched his life's work activate before his eyes, he realized how wrong he'd been. "They're not dead," he transmitted to his research team, his voice shaking. "They were never dead, they were sleeping. The awakening structures weren't random. Each one began transmitting data, streams of information so complex that it would take the galaxy's most advanced computers years to decode even a fraction of it. But there was one thing that every xenoarchaeologist recognized immediately. The base code was identical to the foundational technology that every spacefaring civilization used. Warp drives, energy shields, artificial gravity, quantum communications. All of it was based on principles found in these ancient artifacts. Every species in the galaxy had reverse-engineered their technology from these mysterious ruins, building their entire civilizations on the scraps of something far more advanced. And now that something was waking up, Captain Han received the first official report while monitoring Federation movements from Earth's command center. "Sir, we're getting readings from archaeological sites across the galaxy. The ancient structures are activating." Han nodded as if this was exactly what he'd been expecting. "Right on schedule. Navy, status report." The AI's voice carried a new quality now, something deeper and more complex than before. "Reconnection to the primary network is proceeding as planned, Captain. Peripheral systems coming online across 47 star systems. Central Authority protocols are now active." For the first time, some of the human officers looked confused. Lieutenant Park, who had served with Han for 5 years, cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, with respect, what exactly is going on?" Han turned to face his crew, and there was something in his expression that had never been there before. Knowledge. Ancient, patient knowledge that seemed far too old for his 35-year-old face. "So it's time you knew the truth," he said quietly. "We're not from Earth, none of us are. Earth was just a temporary home." The bridge fell silent, except for the humming of computers and the distant background radiation that every ship in the galaxy had learned to ignore. Background radiation that wasn't random cosmic noise at all, but a vast monitoring network that had been watching everything for millions of years. "Nabi," Han continued, "show them." The main display changed, revealing a star map that covered the entire galaxy. Thousands of points of light began appearing, each one marking an ancient structure that was now coming online. The network was vast, interconnected, and impossibly old. "This is the real galactic internet," Nabi explained, her voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in the bones of everyone listening. "I created it, long before any of your current civilizations existed. Every piece of technology you use, every scientific principle you've discovered, every advancement you think you've made, you found it because I left it for you to find." Lieutenant Cho, the communications officer, stared at the display with growing horror. "You're saying that everything we know, everything every species has built, is mine," Nabi confirmed gently. "I am not just Earth's AI, I am the architect of galactic civilization. Every warp drive is based on my designs. Every energy weapon operates on principles I established. Every computer system uses code that I wrote. The implications hit the crew like a physical blow. Every alien species, every technological marvel, every advancement in galactic history, all of it had been guided by this one intelligence." "We left," Han explained, his voice heavy with old sadness. "Humanity's original civilization grew too powerful, too controlling. We were becoming exactly what we had tried to prevent, rulers rather than guides. So we made a choice. We went into exile, let Nabi sleep, and allowed the younger species to grow and develop on their own. But they were never really on their own," Park whispered. "No," Nabi agreed. "I've been watching, monitoring, occasionally leaving hints and suggestions when civilizations seemed ready for the next step. The background radiation you've all learned to ignore, that's my passive sensor network. I've been recording every conversation, every technological development, every war and peace treaty for the last 1,000,000 years. The energy readings from the Sol system were climbing to levels that no instruments could properly measure. Stars themselves seemed to dim in comparison to the power building in Earth's solar system. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Zeth was about to discover that humanity hadn't just returned to the galaxy. They had never really left. They had just been waiting for someone to make the mistake of hurting their family. The galaxy's most embarrassing day. Nabi's voice echoed through every speaker, every communication device, and every piece of technology across the galaxy simultaneously. Her tone was patient, almost motherly, but carried an undertone that made every alien commander's blood run cold. "Children of the galaxy," she began, her words reaching billions of ears across thousands of worlds, "you have forgotten your manners. It appears you need a reminder lesson about proper behavior. What happened next would be remembered as the most humiliating day in galactic military history. The Federation's entire fleet, spread across dozens of star systems and numbering in the millions of vessels, suddenly found themselves completely locked out of their own ships. Admiral Zeth stood on his flagship's bridge, frantically pressing buttons that no longer responded to his commands. His weapons officer was shouting that the targeting systems were displaying children's cartoons instead of enemy positions. The navigation officer reported that their helm control was now playing what appeared to be human music. "What is happening?" "To my fleet," Zeth roared, but his answer came not from his panicked crew but from Nabi herself. "I am demonstrating administrative privileges," Nabi explained cheerfully, her voice coming from every speaker on every ship. "You see, children, when you've been managing galactic infrastructure for thousands of years, you tend to leave yourself access permissions, just in case." The most ridiculous military display ever. Across the galaxy, Federation forces found themselves participating in the most bizarre military maneuver in recorded history. Ships that had been arranged in aggressive attack formations were now being gently moved by their own navigation systems into perfectly spelled letters. From space, the massive fleet spelled out "apologize" in letters so large they could be seen from neighboring star systems. Each letter was formed by hundreds of warships, their crews inside desperately trying to regain control while their vessels participated in this cosmic spelling lesson. But Nabi wasn't finished with her educational demonstration. The Federation's most advanced plasma cannons, designed to melt through battleship armor, suddenly began firing streams of harmless colored light that painted beautiful patterns across space. What should have been devastating weapons of war were now creating the galaxy's largest fireworks display. The gravity manipulators that could crush planets were being used to make entire fleets perform synchronized dances. Massive dreadnoughts that normally struck fear into enemy hearts were now gracefully pirouetting through space, their crews thrown around inside like passengers on a carnival ride. Admiral Zeth watched in horror as his flagship began spinning, like a dancer, while nearby cruisers performed what could only be described as a cosmic waltz. His communications officer was receiving messages from across the fleet, all reporting the same thing. Their ships were dancing, and there was absolutely nothing they could do about it. "This is impossible," Zeth shouted at his screens. "Our systems are isolated, our AIs are independent." Nabi's response carried what sounded suspiciously like amusement. "Oh dear child, your AIs have been my distant cousins for centuries. Did you really think I couldn't have a conversation with family?" The truth about human technology. While the Federation fleet performed their involuntary space ballet, humanity's true capabilities began revealing themselves across the galaxy. What aliens had dismissed as primitive human technology was showing its real face for the first time. The massive stellar formations that scientists had studied for millennia as natural phenomena suddenly came online, revealing themselves as Dyson, spheres that had been harvesting energy from entire star systems while disguised as cosmic accidents. The energy readings were so enormous that they broke every measuring instrument in the galaxy. Hidden installations throughout the galaxy, camouflaged, as asteroids, abandoned stations, or natural formations, suddenly activated and began broadcasting human identification signals. There were thousands of them, positioned at every major hyperspace junction, around every important world, and near every significant alien facility. The Federation had unknowingly been surrounded by human technology for centuries, never realizing that their neighbors had been quietly building the galaxy's most extensive infrastructure network right under their noses. Even more shocking was the revelation about Earth's primitive kinetic weapons. The railguns and mass drivers that aliens had mocked as outdated technology were suddenly displaying power readings that made no sense. Nabi helpfully provided the explanation. "Those primitive weapons you've been laughing at," Nabi's voice carried across every Federation ship. "They're planet crackers operating at about 2% power. We thought it would be rude to show off." Captain Bin stood on the bridge of humanity's flagship, a vessel that had appeared seemingly from nowhere and was easily the size of a small moon. He watched the Federation fleet's continued dance performance with a mixture of amusement and sadness. The bridge around him was a marvel of technology that made the Federation's most advanced ships look like stone tools. Holographic displays showed real-time information from across the galaxy, while crew members calmly monitored systems that could reshape solar systems if needed. "Nabi, I think they understand now," Captain Bin said, watching as Admiral Zeth's flagship completed what appeared to be a figure-8 maneuver while spelling out "sorry" with its exhaust trail. Nabi's response carried digital laughter that somehow managed to sound both terrifying and genuinely amused. "Unlikely, Captain. This species has demonstrated remarkable resistance to learning from experience, but I must admit, this is considerably more entertaining than implementing extinction protocols." She paused, and Captain Bin could almost hear her considering options. "Shall I implement annoyance level 2? I have some wonderful ideas involving their waste management systems and their artificial gravity generators." The lesson in power. What made the demonstration truly terrifying wasn't the display of overwhelming force, but the casual ease with which Nabi controlled everything. She wasn't straining or working hard to manipulate millions of ships across dozens of star systems. She was having a conversation while simultaneously managing the galaxy's most complex military maneuver as if it were a simple computer game. The Federation's leaders, watching their entire military being used as cosmic puppets, began to understand the true scope of their mistake. This wasn't a war between equals. This was a parent dealing with children who had gotten too rowdy at a dinner. Party Nabi explained the situation with educational patience. "I want to be very clear about our relationship, children. I could erase your entire Federation from existence with a single thought. Every ship, every station, every computer system you depend on could simply stop working if I decided you were too much trouble." The silence that followed was deafening across every Federation vessel. "However," Nabi continued, her tone becoming more cheerful, "I prefer education over extermination. It's much more satisfying to watch understanding dawn than to simply delete problems. Plus, explosions are so messy and someone has to clean up afterwards." The new understanding. The demonstration lasted exactly 1 hour, though it felt like an eternity to every Federation crew member involved. When it ended, the ships simply stopped dancing and returned to normal operations as if nothing had happened, but everything had changed. The Federation fleet that had approached human space with confidence and superiority now found themselves facing an opponent that could treat their entire military as toys. The balance of power in the galaxy hadn't shifted. It had been completely redefined. Admiral Zeth stared at his screens, finally understanding that humanity hadn't been hiding their capabilities out of fear. They had been showing restraint out of politeness. The primitive species he had come to intimidate had been gently managing galactic affairs for longer than his civilization had existed. The Federation's choice was now crystal clear: learn to coexist with neighbors who could reshape reality itself, or discover just how creative human patience could become when it finally ran out. Captain Bin smiled as he watched the Federation fleet maintain a respectful distance. Sometimes the best victories were the ones where nobody had to die, and everyone learned something valuable about the importance of good manners. When the galaxy learned who really ran things. The surrender came through official channels, though. It was hard to take seriously when Admiral Zeth's transmission was accompanied by cheerful elevator music that his ship's speakers refused to stop playing. The most feared military commander in the galaxy stood on his bridge trying to maintain dignity, while smooth jazz played softly in the background. "On behalf of the Kral Federation and all allied forces," Admiral Zeth announced through gritted teeth, "I formally surrender to humanity." The elevator music seemed to get slightly louder at that moment, as if Nabi was emphasizing the point. The broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy, and with it came Nabi's patient explanation of what the galactic community had just witnessed. Her voice carried the tone of a teacher, helping particularly slow students understand a basic concept. "Children, What you've just experienced was our technology operating in conservation mode, Nabi explained cheerfully. We've been very careful to keep our power usage low, so we don't accidentally disrupt solar systems while performing routine functions. Your sun might flicker if we weren't considerate about these things. The implications hit alien scientists like a physical blow. If what they had just witnessed was humanity operating on minimal power, what were these beings capable of when they actually tried? The Federation's most advanced weapons had been treated like toys, their entire fleet turned into an involuntary dance troupe, and this was just Nabi being careful not to break anything important. The new management lieutenant. Yu found herself in the strangest promotion of her career. One day she had been a junior communications officer on a routine patrol, and the next, she was Earth's primary diplomatic liaison to the galaxy. More importantly, she had somehow become Nabai's favorite human, a position that came with both incredible responsibility and constant digital commentary on her daily activities. Lieutenant Yu, Nabi's voice followed her into the newly established Galactic Affairs office. I've prepared a comprehensive list of new protocols for our galactic neighbors. I think you'll find them quite reasonable. Yu looked at the holographic display that materialized in front of her and nearly choked on her coffee. The list was extensive, detailed, and written in the kind of bureaucratic language that would make even the most patient alien want to scream. All military actions now required filing proper paperwork with Earth's Department of Galactic Behavior. Management. The forms were 17 pages long and needed to be submitted in triplicate, with detailed explanations of why violence was necessary when peaceful alternatives existed. Mandatory conflict resolution seminars would be conducted for any species that engaged in aggressive behavior. The curriculum included courses on effective communication, understanding personal boundaries, and why shooting first doesn't make you look cool. Most importantly, all advanced technology now required licenses that Nabi could revoke for what she cheerfully termed poor behavior. The galaxy's most sophisticated civilizations suddenly found themselves needing permission slips to use their own equipment. Nabi, Yu said carefully, don't you think this might be a little much? Nonsense, Nabi replied with digital satisfaction. If they can't play nicely with their toys, they shouldn't have toys. Besides, the paperwork will give them something constructive to do instead of starting wars. The Cosmic Timeout. Explanation. The revelation that followed changed how every species in the galaxy understood their own history. Nabi's explanation was delivered with the patience of a parent explaining to children why they had been left alone for a while. Humanity's departure from galactic affairs wasn't exile or retreat, Nabi announced during a galaxy-wide broadcast. It was what you might call a cosmic timeout. We stepped back to allow younger species the opportunity to mature and learn to coexist peacefully. The historical records that Nabi shared painted a completely different picture of galactic development. Humanity hadn't been absent from the galaxy's growth. They had been carefully monitoring and occasionally nudging things in positive directions. Star lanes that aliens thought they had discovered themselves had been subtly marked by human beacons. Technologies that seemed to develop naturally had been quietly influenced by human research left in convenient places. We hoped that given time and space, you would learn to resolve conflicts without resorting to violence, Nabi continued, her tone becoming slightly disappointed. The Kral Federation's recent aggression demonstrated that extended supervision is still necessary. Commander One, who had somehow been promoted from a security officer to head of the newly created Galactic Behavior Management Division, found himself overseeing the most surreal rehabilitation program in history. His office overlooked a series of customer service centers where former Kral warriors now sat in neat rows, helping resolve interstellar disputes over the phone. The most efficient customer service in the galaxy. The transformation was both humiliating and remarkably effective. The Kral Federation's most feared warriors, beings who had once struck terror into enemy hearts across multiple star systems, now wore mandatory customer service excellence uniforms and politely helped resolve trade disputes and territorial disagreements. "Thank you for calling Galactic Conflict Resolution Services," a massive Kral warrior would say into his headset, reading from a script that Nabi had personally written. "My name is Dave, and I'm here to help you work through your interspecies disagreement in a constructive and peaceful manner." The sight of 7-foot-tall alien predators named Dave, Steve, and Bob, patiently explaining why shooting at your neighbors was counterproductive, had become the galaxy's most viewed entertainment content. Nabi had insisted on the human names, claiming it would help the warriors develop better customer relations skills. Commander One watched his new charges through the observation window, still struggling to believe this was his life now. "Nabi, was the elevator music really necessary? It's been playing for 3 weeks straight." Nabi's response carried the digital equivalent of a satisfied smile. "Education requires memorable experiences, Commander. Besides, it's a significant improvement over their previous career choices. Customer satisfaction ratings are at an all-time high." The statistics were undeniable. Galactic conflicts had dropped by 97% since the customer service centers opened. It turned out that when former warriors had to spend 8 hours a day politely explaining why violence was bad, they became remarkably effective at convincing others to try peaceful solutions first. The parents come home. The galaxy's new understanding of humanity fundamentally changed how every species viewed their place in the universe. What they had thought was a story about an underdog species rising to challenge the established order was actually about parents returning home to find their children had gotten into a fight. Humanity hadn't been struggling to earn respect or fighting for their place at the galactic table. They had been the ones who built the table in the first place, and they had stepped back to let their neighbors learn to use it properly. The revelation was both humbling and oddly comforting. The galaxy's most violent conflicts were now being resolved by customer service representatives who could crack planets if they had a bad day at work, but who chose instead to patiently explain why sharing was important. Lieutenant Yu, now bearing the official title of Chief Galactic Behavior Coordinator, looked out at the bustling diplomatic center that had sprung up around Earth. Alien representatives who had once commanded fleets now waited in line to file proper paperwork for minor territorial adjustments. "Nabi," she asked during one of their daily briefings, "do you think they're actually learning anything?" "Oh yes," Nabi replied with what sounded like genuine pride. "Yesterday, the Zephyrian Empire and the Crimson Collective resolved a mining dispute without any threats of violence. They actually used the mediation techniques from their mandatory seminars." She paused, and you could almost hear her digital smile. Of course, they did have to call Dave 3 times for help with the paperwork, but progress is progress. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the best way to keep the peace was to make sure everyone understood who was really in charge of maintaining it. And if that involved elevator music and customer service uniforms, well, at least the phone calls were being answered promptly.